There is so much that engages the mind and ensnares the emotions that again and again we are wanderers, lost in the midst of our own private and collective wildernesses, with no sense of being at home anywhere, in anything, at any time. Our enthusiasms wax hot and cold. One day life is full, and the wave is high, and the sun is bright, and the hours pass quickly, and we seem no longer afraid. And then the next day, the day is long, it's dreary, and we wonder how it felt to ride with freedom and abandon on the crest of the wave. It is wonderful, therefore, to sit together, to be enveloped by a single moment, and feel the presence and sense the lights and the shadows in the lives of those who sit next to us. It is good to be caught up in the creative silence, surrounded by the brooding presence of God. And perchance, as we wait together in the quietness, some new light may be thrown upon old problems. Some fresh hope may give wings to spirits to which despair is the familiar. Perhaps a sense of forgiveness for sins committed, for errors done, for blundering stupidities that have wrought havoc in other people's lives. All this may be the miracle for us as we wait together in the quietness. O love of God, without which life has no meaning and no harbor. Leave us not alone with our little lives, our broken dreams, our insistent problems, but invade our spirits with thy vitality, that we may be renewed in all the ways of our lives, and that we may turn from this place this day with all that is within us washed and purified and refreshed. We seek this with simplicity of heart and with quiet faith and confidence. Thou wilt not deny thy love to thy children. O God, our Father. Amen. I shall begin this morning a series which bears the same title and will include, before I'm finished, some of the same minds and spirits about whom we talked some 2 years ago under the same title, a title which is not original. It's the title of a book by Cheney, and the title was not original with Cheney because it comes out of the Old Testament. I'd like to lay the groundwork, if I can, for our thinking together. It is just a little risky to discuss anything which has to do with mysticism in California. In some other parts of the United States, it is not as risky. Now that I have said it, then it is necessary for you to think it, so we can go on now. There are 2 or 3 basic insights upon which the mystic rests his total position, if indeed we may think of it in such formal terms. The first insight is that there is an all-pervasive spirit time transcendent, space transcendent, that gathers up into itself the total gamut of human experience. And that's very important. And it's very important because any persons who've thought much about mystical religion, which from my point of view is genuine religion, people who've thought about it tend to divide themselves into two groups. Those who say that mysticism is negative, that it is life-denying, that it pulls man away from the involvements of his life, that its watchword is detachment. And because, therefore, mysticism in this interpretation is life-denying, because it insists upon detachment, upon withdrawal, it is negative, and because it is negative, it is against life, and because it is against life, there can be no morality in it. No morality. And if there is to be an ethic, if we are to be concerned with values or value judgments, then we must be moving out towards life. We must be in the stream of life. Now, the basis for this observation is twofold. In the first place, a part of it is true. When you study the lives of these men and women who have explored the aspect of experience on the side of experience that opens up into the infinite. See, there are two aspects of experiences. There's this side of experience that is measurable, that we can put into words, that we can add up, that we can define. But there's another aspect to the same experience that opens in another direction. And when we look in that direction, we can't quite define it. We can't quite get meaning out of it altogether. It's almost like looking at your watch. You look at your watch, and you know what time it is. And as soon as you finish looking at your watch and close it, someone says, "What time is it?" And then you must look at your watch again. Now, why? Because the first time you looked at your watch, you looked at it for yourself. You were looking at it in a manner that did not have to be unscrambled. But as soon as someone made a demand upon you with reference to time, then you had to relocate this knowledge of which you were already sure, but you had to relocate it in another context, moving out this way. Now, all experience is like that. The simplest relationship that means anything to you discover that there are aspects of it that are quite measurable. That you can define it. You love your child. Yes, you get up early in the morning, you get breakfast for the child, and you stand a lot of noise. You do all sorts of things, which in one sense are manifestations of this feeling tone that you have. But curiously enough, if someone said to you, now pick out the one thing that you do for your child that proves that you love your child, you back away from that. Because no one thing is quite able to do what? To contain all that the experience says. Because the other end of the experience opens out into the infinite, you see. So as long as you're looking this way, you can measure off as you do toothpaste out of one of these tubes. But looking from within another context, looking back from the source out of which it comes, you're unable to reduce it to a manageable unit except to experience it. You know it, but you can't prove it. For the moment you begin trying to prove it, you say to yourself, that means I'm not sure of it. For the things of which I'm sure, I don't try to prove. They are. But I can't escape the necessity for trying to prove it all the time. Now that is what the mystic is saying, that one aspect of his interpretation of his experience moves out into time-space involvements, moves out into activities. But as he is observed, it seems as if what he is really doing is withdrawing from all activities and finding his meaning and his significance in a dimension that has nothing to do with this world and with time-space involvements. Now let's take this overall background and break it down a little and see what we have. I began by saying that the great and first basic principle of the mystic's interpretation of life is that we are surrounded, we are enveloped by an all-pervading spirit. And that spirit is the reality. And there are some who say that spirit is the only reality, and that everything else is shadowy seeming. We may not think that. Now the mystic takes another step, that he is the creation as all other life is, and all other things are. The creation of this all-enveloping spirit. But the human personality has deep within it that which is part and parcel of this all-inclusive, all-pervasive divine spirit. That, to use the words of one about whom we should be talking in some weeks, that the beyond that I seek is within. Now that's what he's talking about. That I am not only created by this spirit, this all-pervasive spirit of God, but that within me is not a manifestation of the Spirit of God, but the Spirit of God And when, therefore, I seek within myself to commune with the Spirit of God, there is available to me, without any go-betweener, primary, immediate, direct, living contact with this living Spirit. Now those are the two pillars upon which the whole mystical insight rests. That we are surrounded by an all-pervasive Spirit of God, which Spirit is the creator of life and the world, and which Spirit is in me. And that Spirit which is in me is the real thing. And I can make direct contact with that Spirit without going outside of myself. Now that is why the mystic seems always to be at war with the institution. For if the institution, you see, says that there's a formula that must be operative before you can experience this, certain ceremonials through which you must pass, the knee must bow in a certain way. You must be in a certain kind of place, built a certain way, with what is called an altar in front of it. Or you must have some individual who himself has been set aside as the unique handler of the inner life or lives of men, that he has to present you before this Spirit, that you must attach in your prayers a certain formula. Well, the mystic says, all right, for anybody who feels that that's what he has to do, but it doesn't mean anything to me, because that's going all the way around Robin Hood's barn, as it were, to get into the door, when the door is in me and no man can shut it. No man. That's why he's always a dangerous man. Suppose he's mistaken. Suppose he's mistaken. You remember the story in McComb's How I Made Woodrow Wilson President? And after McCombs had spent, according to this story, which he wrote, he'd spent a fortune and lost his health practically, and going all over the country, and finally precipitated the landslide. Mr. Woodrow Wilson was the next president. And they went to this summer home and outside of Princeton to talk about who would be what, and, you know, make these great decisions. And when McCombs walked into Woodrow Wilson's study, Woodrow Wilson invited him to a chair, and then he closed the door and stood with his back against the door and addressed McCombs as follows. McCombs, I owe you nothing. God made me president. Well, now, now, when he's talking like that, you see, there isn't anybody who can say he's wrong. No, you can't say he's wrong. Who are you to say? But suppose he misread the signals. Do you? And there is released in him as a result of the conviction that arises in his spirit, inspired by that affirmation, a strength and a power and an endurance that nothing else in the world can give a man. Suppose he is mistaken. There is nothing more destructive in life than a man who is sure that he walked through the door that no man can shut, and there the secret was given him. And on the basis of that secret, he becomes as if he were 10,000 men. Nothing more deadly if the man didn't tarry long enough to get it straight. And who knows what tarrying long enough to get it straight is? Sometimes it takes 30 years to know whether or not a simple thing you did was an error. Sometimes it takes 40 years. And indeed, a man may live his entire life profoundly convinced that his movements are in accordance with what seems to him to be the right way of life, to discover that he was mistaken. He was mistaken. Therefore, that is why the mystic always goes back again and again and again and again and again, testing. He is unwilling to risk a single moment of transcendent ecstasy. Again and again. Now that is a part of the meaning of the disciplines about which we shall be talking during these Sunday mornings. The disciplines that these various men found necessary. And very interestingly enough, no one of them who has spent hundreds of hours in the spiritual disciplines, as they're called, ever says that if the disciplines are followed, that which moves directly as a result of the disciplines will be an active, dynamic awareness of the presence of God. No, the responsibility of the discipline is to keep the spirit pliable, to keep it from getting set, so that when the Spirit of God moves, it won't do this, but it will move inside. And that's why however holy the mystic is, when you talk with him, one thing he's always sure of, and that is that he is so far away from the living fruition of God in his life that the distance that he's away is as the east is from the west. Now, one other thing, and I'll stop. The all-pervading spirit that creates all of life, including the human beings, deep within the individual, says the mystic, there is God. And that God is available to the human spirit. Speak to him thou, for he heareth. Spirit with spirit may meet. Closer is he than breathing, nearer than hands and feet. There is that insistence. And that the disciplines are important because they keep the spirit active. They keep the perspective, the relatedness supple. And then there is this final thing. The necessity for relating the spiritual energy generated by this communion about which we shall be talking these days, to relate that to the world of function. Even a mystic sect like the Essenes, who were very active during the time of Jesus, who withdrew from all participation in the struggle of the Jewish community for freedom from Rome, who went into the hills, who wouldn't cut their hair, did a lot of other things, prayed. They were not withdrawing from the struggle, but they were sure that the only way by which that would destroy the empire, that was their way of working. That was their way of working. They withdrew from cutting a Roman's neck off or doing a lot of other things out here. But they were not withdrawing from the struggle. But they felt that the way to do it is to move underneath the foundation that stabilizes the evil order. And if you move at that level, when you stir, everything that's above you will begin to crumble and fall. Because there is no power less than the power of God that is capable of withstanding the power of God. And therefore, if I can release as a living channel the living energy of God into the situation, anything that is less than that is in the situation will be destroyed. Now that is what the mystic does with social action. He's no coward sticking his head in the sand, praying to God because he's scared, or because he doesn't have nerve to do anything else. But he is sure that he is in touch with terrible energy. Terrible energy. And if his life can be a point of focus through which that energy hits its mark in the world, then the redemptive process can work. And that is why the way of the mystic is so difficult, and yet in some ways so simple. And we shall see during the next 8, 9, 10 weeks what happens in the life of a man when this is his orientation, whether his religion is Buddhist, or Greek, Protestant, Catholic, or Jewish. Or no religion.